It's strange to think about the fact that the New York Times tax story was earlier this week, then the debate, and now, of course, the president's coronavirus diagnosis. It seems that there's been a year's worth of news in the span of just a couple days. So here to help us break it down is Jenna Ellis, a senior legal advisor to the Trump campaign and an attorney to President Trump. So Jenna, I'm really glad to have you on the program tonight because there has been so much news in the span of just a couple of days, and I want to revisit some of the top media headlines from the past week and get your input on them because I want to start with the strange event that I saw last night. I'm sure you heard this story. First Lady Melania Trump's friend and advisor was recording private conversations with her in preparation for a book and then gave the tapes to CNN in order to promote the upcoming release. So I want to play a clip from that exchange and then get your response.
I'm working like a my ass
I know.
With Christmas stuff that, who gives a about Christmas stuff and decoration, but I need to do it, right?
Yeah, but 100%. You have no choice.
And then I do it, and I say that I'm working on Christmas, planning for the Christmas, and they said, oh, what about the children, that they were separated? Give me a break. Where they were saying anything when Obama did that?
I know.
I cannot go. I was trying to get the kid reunited with the mom. I didn't have a chance. It needs to go through the process and through the law.
Now, I wanted to play that clip because the headline was that she was talking bad about Christmas, when in reality, she was talking about the fact that she couldn't get the story out, that she was trying to reunite a child and their mother who was separated at the border, not to mention the rest of that whole story that was just completely manipulated, let alone the fact I don't know if there's much news in there. What did you think of that development?
Yeah, well, Alex, it's only the fake news, mainstream, hideous, disgusting media that can take, First Lady cares about helping children more than Christmas decorations and turn this into, it's the conservative White House that has a war on Christmas. I mean, this just shows how they are absolutely 100% of the time manipulating the story just to hate on President Trump and First Lady Melania. I actually thought that this put her in a very good light to show how much she cares and she really wants to help the children, but she understands law and order. And the second thing as well is that for this aide to release private conversation tapes and to even have taped this in the first place is absolutely disgusting. The First Lady and others deserve privacy in their private conversations. And even though, of course, this put her in a good light, and I think that it really backfired on CNN as well as the aide for even releasing these, and it shows what disgusting people they are, I think that we have to pause and say, even though these are people of interest, there's always palace intrigue, they're public figures, they still deserve privacy in their private conversations.
I totally agree. And I think anybody who sees that as well knows exactly what's happening there. I mean, it's someone who is taking advantage of their friend in order to sell a book. And then when you look at the headline too, I mean, there's that one line where she says, give me an effing break. But what that is in response to is the hypocrisy that they're demonstrating right there. I mean, people tweeted out that quote without adding the second part where she says, where were they when the Obama administration did that? So I think a lot of people use that opportunity to see exactly what CNN and this one individual is doing as well. But the second exchange that I want to get your take on is from on Thursday, in which John Roberts of Fox News got into exchange with Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany regarding President Trump's condemnation of white supremacy, something that he did earlier in the day as well as the debate. But I want to play the clip really quick for our viewers. Take a look.
As the person who speaks for the president, does the president denounce white supremacism and groups that espouse it in all their forms?
This has been answered yesterday by the president himself, the day before by the president himself on the debate stage. The president was asked this. He said, sure, 3 times. Yesterday, he was point blank asked, do you denounce white supremacy? And he said, I've always denounced any form of that. I can go back and read for you in August 2019, in one voice, our nation must condemn racism, bigotry, and white supremacy. In August of 2017, racism is evil, and those who cause violence in its name are criminals and thugs, including the KKK, neo-Nazis, white supremacists, and other hate groups. I have an entire list of these quotes that I can go through with you.
So, Jenna, Kayleigh McEnany right there lays out multiple examples of times where President Trump has condemned white supremacy. We've played a supercut on this show before where it talks about every single time dating back to 2015 all the way up to 2020 where he's done it as well. But after that exchange, John Roberts took to the airwaves and said that he didn't get the answer that he was looking for, that still the White House was failing to condemn white supremacy. What is behind this narrative that not only Chris Wallace bringing it up once again at the debates, but then John Roberts and other people in the media as well keep hammering this issue home?
Well, this has been a failing narrative since 2015 to somehow paint President Trump as a racist, as a xenophobe, and it's just completely false and fake. And they have nothing else to condemn him with. And so they continue to pivot to these really just untoward and ridiculously disproven narratives. And so, this is something where President Trump has never endorsed white supremacy. So the fact that they have to consistently say, please denounce this, when he's been clearly on record multiple times over the past 4 years condemning this, for John Roberts and others to say, well, this isn't exactly the answer that we wanted, is just trying to perpetuate the narrative and showing that the media will never be satisfied unless an answer plays into what they prefer. And so when Kayleigh can go through and say, here are all the times that he's condemned it, then they're going, oh, great. Now we have to actually say, yeah, he has condemned white supremacy. And that's not what they want to say. So they try to just say, well, that's not exactly how we preferred. It was the same way as the debate. He said, sure, 3 times when Chris Wallace asked him to condemn white supremacy. And then he used Chris Wallace's own words to say, to stand down and stand by. I mean, that was just, it was so obvious, but that's not what the fake news media wants. And to your point earlier, Alex, the media also will put out, without context, some little quotation and clip that is completely devoid of the rest of the conversation, and it flies halfway around the world before anyone pauses to say, well, wait a second, is that the full story?
Yeah, and it was an unfair question to begin with for the reasons that you just laid out, but I wouldn't have had as much of a problem with it if it was also asked to Joe Biden, because he has remarks more recently than President Trump that are much more racially tense, as some people in the media say, than anything President Trump has said as recently. The "you ain't black" comments is the most recent one. But even when he said, what was it, poor kids are just as smart as rich kids, something like that. I mean, Joe Biden has more recent problematic statements, but it is hard to think that that debate was just earlier this week. I mean, it's already something that seems like it's been days ago, which may be problematic since many members of the media are now talking about canceling the remaining debate events. So I do want to play this quick supercut of some of the left's most prominent voices calling out for that very possibility.
So, very simple question. After what went down this evening, do you think Joe Biden should participate in a second or third debate?
Should the next 2 debates go on as scheduled?
I wouldn't be surprised, by the way, if this is the last presidential debate.
So, Jenna, what does this response tell you about how things actually went on Tuesday? Because something tells me if it went very well for Joe Biden, they wouldn't be calling about canceling the remaining debates.
Yeah, so of course, the Democrats see that Joe Biden failed to respond to questions. He actually pivoted to a moderate position. President Trump actually pinned him a couple of times on court packing, on other things. As you said, Chris Wallace failed to ask him to condemn BLM and Antifa. And he even just said that Antifa is just an idea. I mean, that's patently false. And so the problem, though, with these debates is that they're so overproduced that there's not a natural back and forth conversation. And so Chris Wallace kept interrupting President Trump, saying, this is something that's for the next segment, Natural conversation just doesn't happen that way. But I think that the Democrats are seeing that Joe Biden can't bob and weave, and he can't actually meet President Trump head to head. And so they're going to want to try to use any excuse possible to say, maybe the next 2 shouldn't happen. But I also want to point out that the next debate moderator has now been found out to be a former intern of Joe Biden and has, of course, ties to the Democratic Party. And so, this is something I think that he should be disqualified as a moderator. And the Commission on Presidential Debates really needs to have, if they're going to modify the rules in any way, they need to modify them for fundamental fairness to both candidates.
And that's addition to that other moderator as well, also sharing an op-ed that was titled "Not Trump, Not Ever." I mean, that is pretty much as biased as you can get if you've worked for one of the candidates and then have shared an op-ed that says you will never approve of the other one in any circumstance. So I think that is laying out the scene perfectly. And Jen, I really appreciate you coming on and breaking down all of these headlines from the past week, because there's a lot of them and it's easy to miss a lot of them. But in the big picture, I think it's really important to cover them as well. So Jenna Ellis, thank you very much for coming on the program tonight.
Thanks, Alex.